The maid's gun was pressed against his father's temple when Adrian walked in. His billionaire patriarch, the man who'd never bowed to anyone, was sobbing on his knees, begging for mercy. But Nicole wasn't the broken woman they'd hired 3 years ago. The scars on her face were fake. Her accent was a lie. And the photograph she threw at Adrian's feet showed a dead police officer who looked exactly like her. "Your father killed him," she whispered, her voice dripping venom. "Tried to kill me too, left me scarred, broken, invisible." Her smile was pure venom. "So I became your perfect little servant. Learned all your secrets. Now your empire dies tonight." The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor the moment Adrian Reeves saw them. His father, the iron-willed Richard Corleone, a man who'd crushed empires and never shed a tear, was sobbing like a broken child in the arms of their quiet housemaid. But Nicole Wick wasn't comforting him. Her fingers were wrapped around something that glinted in the dim light of the mansion's study. Something cold. Something deadly. Adrian's Italian leather shoes crunched on the broken glass as he stepped into the shadow-drenched study. The grandfather clocks ticking felt like gunshots in the suffocating silence. His father, the man who'd built a $30 billion empire from nothing, was on his knees. Actual knees. His silver hair disheveled, his custom-tailored suit wrinkled like paper. But it was Nicole who made Adrian's blood freeze. She looked different. Not the meek, invisible woman who'd served their family for 3 years. Her green eyes burned with something Adrian had never seen before, something that made his chest tighten with primal fear. The modest uniform was gone, replaced by a black dress that hugged curves he'd never noticed. Her usually pinned-back hair fell in waves around her face, and there was a scar running from her left temple to her jaw, a scar he'd somehow never seen. How had he never seen that scar? "Please," his father whispered, his voice cracking like a 13-year-old boy's. "Nicole, please. I can explain everything." Nicole's lips curved into a smile that belonged in nightmares. "Explain? Oh, Richard. You've had 25 years to explain." Her accent was different too, not the soft, barely there voice she'd used as their maid, but something sharper. More educated. More dangerous. Adrian's hand found the doorframe for support. His father, the man who'd negotiated with presidents, who'd stared down hostile takeovers without blinking, was begging. "Dad." Adrian's voice came out hoarse. "What's going on?" Nicole turned toward him, and Adrian saw what was in her hand. A gun. Chrome-plated, steady as a surgeon's scalpel against his father's temple. But it was her eyes that destroyed him. They weren't the quiet, submissive eyes of their housemaid. They blazed with the fury of someone who'd been planning this moment for years. Someone who'd been watching. Waiting. Learning every secret, every weakness. "Hello, Adrian," she said, her voice honey-smooth and venomous. Right on time. The study felt like it was spinning. The familiar smell of his father's cigars and leather-bound books now seemed toxic. Everything Adrian thought he knew about his life was cracking like ice under his feet. "Nicole, what are you? How did you get a gun?" She laughed, and the sound sent chills down Adrian's spine. "Oh, sweet Adrian. You really don't know, do you?" Her free hand reached into her dress and pulled out a photograph. Old. Yellowed at the edges. She tossed it at his feet. Adrian bent slowly, never taking his eyes off the weapon pressed against his father's head. The photo showed a young woman, beautiful, unscarred, standing next to a man in a police uniform. The woman looked exactly like Nicole, but her face was whole. Perfect. No scars. No pain etched into her features. "That's my brother," Nicole whispered. "Officer Daniel Wick. Ring any bells, Richard?" Adrian's father made a sound like a wounded animal. "Nicole, I can make this right. Whatever you want." "What I want." Her voice rose like a siren. "I want my brother back. I want my face back. I want the 25 years you stole from me." Adrian's world tilted. The photograph trembled in his hands. Nicole, I don't understand. You've worked for us for 3 years. You've been a ghost. She finished. A shadow? Your perfect little invisible maid. Her laugh was bitter as burnt coffee. I've been a lot of things, Adrian. But I've never been what you thought I was. The grandfather clock chimed midnight, and Adrian felt like he was watching his life end 1 second at a time. Your father killed him, Nicole said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. My brother found something he shouldn't have. Evidence that could have sent your precious patriarch to prison for life. So Richard Corleone, your loving father, had him murdered. Made it look like a car accident. That's not true, Adrian breathed. Dad, tell her that's not true. But his father's silence was an admission of guilt that hit Adrian like a sledgehammer to the chest. And when I tried to investigate, Nicole continued, pressing the gun harder against his father's temple, when I got too close to the truth, your father had me silenced too. A little explosion. Not big enough to kill me, that would have been too suspicious after my brother's death. Just enough to destroy my face. My life. My identity. Adrian stared at the scar running down her cheek. How many times had she served him dinner with that mark hidden beneath makeup and shadows? So I disappeared, Nicole whispered. Became someone else. Spent years learning how to become invisible. How to clean houses and serve food and blend into the background. And then I applied to work in this house. Your house. Because I knew that one day, I'd get my chance. The room felt like it was closing in. Adrian's billion-dollar empire, his perfect life, everything he'd built, it was all constructed on a foundation of lies and murder. What do you want? He managed to ask. Nicole's smile was beautiful and terrifying. Justice, Adrian. Finally, after 25 years of waiting, I want justice. She cocked the gun, and the click echoed through the study like thunder. But first, she said, her eyes never leaving Adrian's face, I think it's time you learned the truth about your perfect father. And about yourself. First? The silence stretched between them like a tightrope over hell. Adrian could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears, could smell the metallic scent of fear sweat rolling off his father's skin. But it was Nicole who commanded the room now, Nicole, who'd spent 3 years invisible in their home, learning their routines, their secrets, their weaknesses. You want the truth, Adrian? Nicole's voice was velvet wrapped around razor blades. Let's start with why you never married. Adrian's breath caught. How could she know about his deepest shame? About the nights he'd spent staring at the ceiling, wondering why he could never commit to any of the beautiful, accomplished women who'd thrown themselves at him? 3 years ago, when I first walked into this house as your maid, you were engaged to Victoria Hamilton. Remember her? The senator's daughter. Perfect pedigree, perfect smile, perfect political connections. Nicole's free hand traced the edge of the mahogany desk. But something made you call off that wedding 2 weeks before the ceremony. Something you couldn't explain to anyone. Adrian's hands were shaking now. Victoria. God, Victoria had been everything his father wanted in a daughter-in-law. But something about her had felt wrong. Empty. Like marrying a beautiful corpse. It was me, wasn't it? Nicole continued, her voice dropping to an intimate whisper. The new maid who barely spoke, who moved through your house like a shadow. You started finding excuses to be in whatever room I was cleaning. Started asking me questions about my life, even though I never answered. Heat crawled up Adrian's neck. She was right. He'd been drawn to her in a way that made no sense, this quiet woman who seemed to see everything and reveal nothing. You felt it too, Nicole said, and for a moment, her mask slipped. Adrian caught a glimpse of something raw beneath the vengeance. Pain. Longing. That connection. That pull. You couldn't understand why a billionaire would be attracted to his maid. Richard Corleone's voice cracked through the tension. Nicole, whatever game you're playing. Shut up. The gun pressed harder against his temple. I'm not talking to you yet, old man. I'm talking to your son. The son who's never known the truth about why his mother really died. Adrian's world tilted again. What? Nicole's eyes bored into his. Your mother didn't die in a riding accident, Adrian. She found out about your father's business. The real business. The murders, the cover-ups, the empire built on blood. And when she threatened to expose him. No. Adrian's voice was barely a whisper. She was going to take you and run. Disappear with her little boy and start over somewhere your father couldn't find you. But Richard couldn't let that happen. Too much money at stake. Too much power. Adrian looked at his father, searching for a denial that never came. Instead, he saw guilt written in every line of the older man's face. The horse was spooked on purpose, Nicole continued relentlessly. A small explosive device. Remote detonated. Just like the bomb that killed my brother. Just like the one that destroyed my face. Your father has a signature, Adrian. He likes things that look like accidents. The room was spinning. Adrian grabbed the edge of a chair to keep from falling. His mother, his beautiful laughing mother who'd sung him lullabies and bandaged his scraped knees, murdered by the man who'd raised him. But you want to know the really twisted part? Nicole's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Your father didn't just kill your mother. He replaced her. With me. What are you talking about? Nicole reached into her dress again and pulled out another photograph. This one was recent, taken with a long-range lens through the mansion's windows. It showed Adrian and Nicole in the kitchen 3 months ago. He was laughing at something she'd said, and her face was turned toward him with an expression of such tender longing that it took his breath away. But someone had been watching them. Someone had been documenting their growing connection. Your father hired me, Nicole said quietly. Not as a maid. As bait. He knew you were getting suspicious about your mother's death. Knew you were starting to ask questions. So he brought in someone to distract you. Someone broken enough to be controllable, but beautiful enough to capture your attention. Adrian felt like he was drowning in quicksand. That's impossible. You said you came here for revenge. I did. But I also came here because your father offered me something I needed more than vengeance. Her voice cracked. Surgery. To fix my face. To give me back the life his bomb stole from me. All I had to do was make you fall in love with me and then disappear when he gave the word. The weight of betrayal crashed down on Adrian like an avalanche. His father had orchestrated everything. Their meeting, their growing attraction, the way Nicole seemed to understand him better than anyone ever had. But here's what your brilliant father didn't count on, Nicole continued, her voice growing stronger. I didn't just make you fall in love with me. I fell in love with you too. Adrian's heart stopped beating for several seconds. And that, Nicole said, cocking the gun again, is what makes tonight so deliciously perfect. Because now Richard gets to watch his son learn the truth about everything, including the fact that the woman he loves most in this world is about to destroy his family forever. Hey everyone, I can see this story is getting incredibly intense. The psychological warfare between these characters is off the charts. If you're as blown away by these revelations as I am, drop a comment and let me know, what do you think Nicole's endgame really is? And make sure you're subscribed because this is only going to get more twisted from here. Adrian stared at Nicole, really looked at her for the first time. Beneath the scars and the vengeance and the carefully constructed facade, he could see traces of the woman who'd brought him coffee on sleepless nights. Who'd listened to him talk about business deals and family pressures. Who'd been the only person in his world who'd never wanted anything from him except his company. You love me, he whispered. For a moment, Nicole's composure cracked completely. Tears filled her eyes, and she looked like the broken girl she'd been 25 years ago. God help me, Adrian. I've loved you since the day you asked me about my favorite book. Since you remembered I liked vanilla in my coffee. Since you treated me like a human being instead of furniture. Then don't do this, Adrian pleaded. Whatever you're planning, we can find another way. There is no other way. Her voice exploded through the study. Do you know what it's like to love the son of the man who murdered your brother? Who destroyed your face? Who killed your mother? She laughed bitterly. Yes, Adrian. I know about your nightmares. About how you scream her name in your sleep. About how you blame yourself for not being able to save her. Adrian felt exposed, flayed open. She'd been watching him, learning him, becoming an expert in his pain while planning her revenge. Your father created the perfect trap, Nicole continued. He brought his victim's sister into his home to seduce his son. But he forgot that love is the one thing you can't control. The one weapon that cuts both ways. Richard Corleone finally found his voice. Nicole, if you hurt my son. You'll what? She spun the gun toward him so fast Adrian didn't see her move. Kill me? Like you killed my brother? Like you killed his mother? Like you tried to kill me. I never tried to kill you, Richard whispered. The explosion, it was meant to scare you, to make you stop investigating. Scare me. Nicole's voice rose to a shriek. You destroyed my face. You took everything from me. My career, my relationships, my entire life. I can fix this, Richard begged. Whatever you want, money, surgery, anything. I already have everything I want. Nicole's smile returned, cold and calculating. I have your son's love. I have your secrets. And in exactly 37 minutes, I'm going to have your empire. Adrian felt ice form in his veins. What happens in 37 minutes? Nicole checked the elegant watch on her wrist, a watch Adrian now realized was far too expensive for a maid's salary. At exactly 12:37 a.m., a certain video will be automatically uploaded to every major news outlet in the country. Security footage from this very room, showing your father confessing to murder. Audio recordings of conversations he thought were private. Financial documents proving how your family fortune was really built. You recorded us, Adrian breathed. For 3 years, Nicole confirmed. Every dinner conversation. Every business meeting. Every time your father thought he was safe in his own home. Did you know he talks in his sleep? Very revealing, the things guilty men say when they think no one's listening. Adrian looked at his father, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. A man who'd lived with blood on his hands for decades, who'd murdered Adrian's mother and countless others to protect his empire of lies. But that's not the best part, Nicole continued, her eyes glittering with anticipation. The best part is what happens after the video uploads. See, I've spent the last year moving money. Small amounts at first, so no one would notice. Transfers to offshore accounts. Liquidating assets. Converting stocks to cash. That's impossible, Adrian said. The security protocols are surprisingly easy to bypass when you're sleeping with the CEO, Nicole finished. You gave me access to everything, Adrian. Your passwords, your biometric signatures, your private accounts. Love makes people so wonderfully trusting. The magnitude of her betrayal hit Adrian like a physical blow. She hadn't just seduced him, she'd systematically stolen his entire fortune while he'd fallen deeper in love with her. How much? He asked quietly. $12 billion, Nicole said with satisfaction. Everything liquid. Everything I could move without triggering immediate alarms. By tomorrow morning, the Corleone empire won't exist anymore. Richard Corleone made a strangled sound. You can't, the employees, the shareholders. We'll be fine, Nicole said calmly. The money isn't disappearing. It's being redistributed. To the families of everyone your business practices have destroyed over the years. To the communities your factories have poisoned. To the people whose lives you've ruined building your precious legacy. Adrian stared at her, seeing her clearly for the first time. This wasn't just revenge, it was justice on a scale he'd never imagined. And the $3 billion left in the accounts you couldn't access? Adrian asked. Nicole's smile was heartbreaking in its tenderness. That stays with you. Because despite everything, despite all the lies and manipulation and blood, I meant what I said. I love you, Adrian Reeves. And I want you to have a chance at a clean life. A clean life without you, Adrian said quietly. For the first time since he'd entered the study, Nicole's hand trembled slightly. Yes. Without me. Because after tonight, there's no going back. No forgiveness. No redemption. There's only the truth, and the consequences of 25 years of lies. The grandfather clock chimed 12:15 a.m. 22 minutes until Nicole's evidence destroyed everything Adrian had ever known. But as he looked at the woman he loved, scarred, vengeful, brilliant Nicole, Adrian realized the most terrifying truth of all. He wasn't sure he wanted to stop her. The silence that followed Nicole's confession was broken by the sound of Adrian's phone buzzing against the marble floor where he dropped it. The screen lit up with banking alerts, transfers, account closures, asset liquidations. His entire world converting to numbers on a screen, then vanishing into the digital ether. But Adrian couldn't look away from Nicole's face. Even with the scars, even with the gun in her hand, even with the weight of her betrayal crushing his chest, she was still the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. You have 19 minutes to decide, Nicole said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. 19 minutes before those recordings go live and destroy your father. Before the world learns what the Corleone Empire is really built on. And then what? Adrian asked. You disappear? Start over somewhere with $12 billion of my money. Nicole's laugh was broken glass. You still don't understand, do you? This was never about the money. She reached into her dress one final time and pulled out a small device, sleek silver, with a single red button. Adrian's blood turned to ice when he realized what it was. A dead man's switch, Nicole explained calmly. If my heart stops beating, if someone shoots me, if I let go of this button, boom. Not just the recordings. Everything. Every dirty secret your family has buried for 3 generations. Every murder, every cover-up, every innocent life destroyed to protect the Corleone name. Richard Corleone made a sound like a dying animal. Nicole, please. Think about what you're doing. Think about Adrian. I am thinking about Adrian. Nicole's voice cracked like a whip. I'm thinking about the man I love living his entire life on a foundation of lies and blood. I'm thinking about freeing him from this poison before it destroys his soul like it destroyed yours. Adrian stepped closer, his hands raised in surrender. Nicole, look at me. Just look at me. She turned those green eyes toward him, and Adrian saw everything, the love, the pain, the desperate hope that somehow this could all end differently. If you love me, Adrian said quietly, then give me a choice. Don't make this decision for me. What choice? Nicole whispered. Your father is a monster. Your empire is built on murder. What choice is there? The choice to stand with you, Adrian said, and meant it. The choice to help you expose the truth. The choice to build something clean from the ashes of this nightmare. For a moment, hope flickered in Nicole's eyes. Then it died, replaced by bitter knowledge. You don't understand, she said. You can't stand with me, Adrian. Because there's one more secret. One more truth I haven't told you yet. Adrian's heart began racing. What truth? Nicole looked directly at his father. Tell him, Richard. Tell him why you really hired me. Tell him the real reason you brought me into this house. Richard Corleone's face went pale as cemetery stone. Nicole, don't. Tell him. Nicole screamed, and for a moment the gun swung toward the ceiling. Tell him, or I press this button right now and end all of us. Dad. Adrian's voice was barely audible. What is she talking about? The grandfather clock ticked away precious seconds. Richard Corleone looked like he was aging a decade with each breath. I'm dying, he finally whispered. The words hit Adrian like a sledgehammer. What? Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. 6 months, maybe 8 if I'm lucky. Richard's voice was hollow, defeated. I've known for a year. That's why I needed to secure the succession. Make sure the business would survive. Adrian felt the floor tilting beneath his feet. You're dying, and you didn't tell me? I couldn't. If the board found out, if our competitors knew, the empire would crumble overnight. Everything we've built would be destroyed. So you brought in Nicole to what? Distract me while you got your affairs in order? Not just distract you. Richard's eyes found Nicole's. To replace me. Adrian's world exploded into fragments. What the hell does that mean? Nicole's smile was sharp as a blade. It means your father didn't just want me to seduce you, Adrian. He wanted me to become the next Mrs. Corleone. To marry you, have your children, and then slowly poison you, just like he poisoned your mother, so I could inherit everything and run the empire according to his wishes. The study spun around Adrian like a carnival ride. That's insane. Is it? Nicole pulled out another photograph, this one showing Richard Corleone handing her a small vial of clear liquid. This was taken 6 months ago. Ricin. Colorless, odorless, undetectable in small doses. Your father wanted me to start slipping it into your food after our wedding. Just enough to make you sick at first. Then sicker. Then. You would have inherited everything as my grieving widow, Adrian finished, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. And then I was supposed to run the empire as Richard's puppet. His final revenge against the brother who'd tried to expose him. Having his victim's sister carry on his legacy of blood and lies. Adrian stared at his father, this stranger wearing a familiar face. You planned to have me murdered. It wasn't supposed to be murder, Richard said desperately. It was supposed to look like illness. Natural causes. You would have just faded away. Peacefully. Like my mother faded away peacefully from a riding accident. Richard's silence was an admission of guilt that shattered what remained of Adrian's heart. But here's the beautiful irony, Nicole continued, her voice gaining strength. Your father made one crucial mistake in his perfect plan. He assumed I would be able to poison the man I fell in love with. He assumed I could watch you die slowly and not break apart inside. So what's your plan now? Adrian asked. If you're not going to kill me, and you won't let me stand with you, what happens next? Nicole checked her watch. 15 minutes until the recordings go live. 14 minutes and 30 seconds until the world learns the truth about the Corleone Empire. And then... She looked directly into Adrian's eyes, and he saw his own death reflected there. And then I'm going to finish what your father started. I'm going to destroy this family completely. But I'm going to do it the right way. With the truth. With justice. With the whole world watching. Adrian felt something cold and sharp pierce his chest. You're going to kill yourself. The ricin isn't just for you, Adrian. Your father gave me enough for both of us. A murder-suicide that would shock the world and cement his legend as the grieving patriarch who lost everything. She pulled the small vial from her dress, and Adrian saw that it was half empty. I took my dose 20 minutes ago. Right before you walked into this room. I have maybe an hour before it starts to take effect. Enough time to watch your father's empire burn. Enough time to make sure justice is finally served. Nicole, no. Adrian lunged toward her, but she stepped back, the gun swinging toward him. "Don't make this harder than it has to be," she whispered. "This is the only way it ends. The only way you're free of this poison." "I don't want to be free if it means losing you." "You lost me 3 years ago when I walked into this house as your maid," Nicole said, her voice breaking. "Everything since then has been a lie. A performance. A ghost trying to find peace." "No." Adrian's voice was steel. "What we have is real. What we feel, that's the only truth in this room." "How can you say that?" Nicole's composure finally cracked completely. "I've betrayed you. I've stolen from you. I've been poisoning myself to punish your father. How can you still love someone like me?" "Because I know who you really are," Adrian said, stepping closer despite the gun. "You're not the broken girl your father created. You're not the vengeful woman who's been planning this for 25 years. You're the woman who brought me soup when I was sick. Who listened to my fears about taking over the business. Who made me laugh for the first time since my mother died." "Stop," Nicole whispered, but there was no force behind it. "You want to know the real truth?" Adrian continued. "The reason I never married Victoria Hamilton? The reason I've never been able to commit to anyone? It's because somewhere deep down, I've been waiting my whole life for you. For the woman who would see through all the money and power to the broken man underneath." If you're as emotionally invested in Adrian and Nicole's tragic love story as I am right now, please hit that like button and let me know in the comments. Do you think there's still hope for these two? This story is getting more intense by the minute, so make sure you're subscribed for what's coming next. Nicole was sobbing now, the gun trembling in her hand. "It doesn't matter what we feel. The ricin, it's already in my system. Even if I wanted to stop this, even if I wanted to run away with you." "There are antidotes," Adrian said desperately. "Treatments. We can get you to a hospital. In less than an hour, the world is going to know what your father did. The FBI will raid this house. You'll be arrested as an accomplice. Everything you've ever known will be destroyed." "Then let it be destroyed," Adrian said simply. "Let it all burn. I don't care about the money or the empire or any of it. I only care about you." Nicole stared at him, and for a moment, Adrian thought he'd reached her. Thought maybe love could triumph over vengeance after all. Then the grandfather clock chimed 12:30 a.m., and Nicole's face hardened into resolve. 7 minutes, she said quietly. 7 minutes until the world learns the truth. And then, Adrian Reeves, you're going to have to choose, your father's empire, or the woman who destroyed it. She raised the gun and pointed it directly at Richard Corleone's heart. Time to find out which one you love more. 7 minutes felt like 7 lifetimes as Adrian stared down the barrel of an impossible choice. His father, dying, desperate, guilty of unspeakable crimes, cowered behind the mahogany desk that had been the throne of the Corleone Empire for 3 decades. Nicole, poisoned, vengeful, the love of his life, held the power to destroy everything with a single bullet or the release of a single button. "Choose," Nicole whispered, and her voice carried the weight of 25 years of pain. But Adrian was done with choices made by other people. Done with secrets and lies and the chess games that had defined his entire existence. "No," he said simply. Nicole's eyes widened. "What?" "I said no. I'm not choosing between you and him. I'm not playing this game anymore." Adrian stepped closer, close enough now that he could see the rapid pulse in Nicole's throat, could smell the vanilla perfume she still wore despite everything. "You want to know what I choose? I choose the truth. All of it." He pulled his phone from his jacket pocket and hit a number on speed dial. "Adrian, what are you doing?" Richard's voice cracked with panic. The phone rang once. Twice. Then a professional voice answered, "Federal Bureau of Investigation, Agent Matthews speaking." "Agent Matthews, this is Adrian Corleone. I'm calling to report multiple murders, including the death of my mother, committed by Richard Corleone. I'm at the Corleone estate, and I need immediate assistance." Nicole's gun swung toward Adrian, but her hand was shaking so violently now she could barely hold it steady. "What have you done?" "What you should have done 25 years ago," Adrian said quietly. "I'm turning him in myself." "Sir, can you repeat that?" Agent Matthew's voice was sharp with attention. "My father murdered Detective Daniel Wick 25 years ago. He murdered my mother, Elizabeth Corleone, 15 years ago. And he's been running a criminal empire built on blackmail, extortion, and murder for 3 decades. I have a witness here who can provide evidence, and I'm prepared to testify." The silence in the room was deafening. Richard Corleone looked like he'd been shot. Nicole's face had gone pale as marble. "Sir, are you in immediate danger?" Adrian looked at Nicole, beautiful, broken Nicole who'd been carrying this burden alone for so long. "No. Not anymore." He ended the call and dropped the phone on the floor. "They'll be here in 10 minutes, he said. Maybe less. The recordings won't matter now. I've already confessed everything." "You stupid, idealistic fool." Richard screamed, finally finding his voice. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The FBI will seize everything. The employees, the shareholders, thousands of people will lose their jobs." "Good," Adrian said coldly. "Maybe they can find honest work." Nicole was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you destroy your own life?" "Because it was never my life," Adrian replied. "It was his. Built on lies and blood and the suffering of people like you and your brother. I don't want any part of it anymore." "But the money, your future." "What future?" Adrian laughed bitterly. "A future where I pretend I don't know my father is a murderer? Where I run an empire built on corpses? Where I never sleep peacefully again because I'm wondering which of my business partners might suddenly have accidents?" He stepped closer to Nicole, close enough that the gun barrel was almost touching his chest. "You asked me to choose between him and you. But there was never really a choice, was there? You're the only real thing in my life. The only person who's ever seen me, not my money, not my name, not my power, just me." Tears were streaming down Nicole's scarred face. "Adrian the Ricin, I'm going to die anyway. You can't save me." "Maybe not. But I can try. And I can make sure that when you die, it's not because you carried this burden alone anymore." The sound of sirens in the distance cut through the night air. Nicole's eyes went wide with panic. "They're coming," she whispered. "Yes, they are." Adrian reached out slowly and placed his hand over hers on the gun. "And when they get here, you're going to tell them everything. Every detail. Every piece of evidence you've collected. You're going to make sure my father pays for what he did to your brother, to your face, to my mother. I can't, the dead man switch, if I let go." "Then don't let go. Keep holding it until every agent, every reporter, every camera crew in the city is here to witness his confession. Make sure the whole world knows the truth." Richard Corleone was backing toward the window now, desperation making him wild. "You don't understand what you're doing, son. The people I've dealt with over the years, if they think I might talk. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you started murdering innocent people," Adrian said without turning around. The sirens were getting louder. Nicole looked toward the window, then back at Adrian, her eyes filled with a strange mixture of terror and hope. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I haven't told you yet." Adrian's heart clenched. "What?" "The ricin," I lied. "I didn't take it." The words hit Adrian like an electric shock. "What?" "I couldn't do it. I kept thinking about your smile, about the way you laugh at my terrible jokes, about how you always remember to ask if I've eaten." Her voice broke. "I couldn't poison myself and leave you to find my body. I couldn't do that to you." Adrian felt like the sun was rising inside his chest. So you're not going to die. Not from ricin. But Adrian, when the FBI gets here, when this all comes out, I'm going to prison too. I stole $12 billion. I held your father at gunpoint. I've committed federal crimes. We'll figure it out, Adrian said desperately. We'll get you the best lawyers. With what money? Nicole laughed through her tears. I told you, I gave it all away. Every penny. To victims' families, to charities, to people your father's business practices destroyed. There's nothing left. The front door of the mansion exploded open. Shouts echoed through the hallways, FBI. Nobody move. Nicole's grip tightened on both the gun and the dead man's switch. Adrian, I need you to know something. These 3 years, living in your house, watching you, falling in love with you, they were the happiest of my life. Even though it was all built on lies, even though I was here for revenge, you made me feel human again. Heavy footsteps pounded up the main staircase. I love you too, Adrian said. Whatever happens next, whatever prison they send you to, whatever. Mr. Corleone. The study door burst open, revealing 6 FBI agents in tactical gear. Everyone freeze. Nicole immediately dropped the gun and raised her hands, but she kept her thumb firmly pressed on the dead man's switch. Agent Matthews, she called out, her voice steady now. My name is Nicole Wick. I'm the sister of Detective Daniel Wick, murdered 25 years ago by Richard Corleone. I have evidence, recordings, financial documents, photographs, that prove his guilt. Ma'am, I need you to put down whatever you're holding in your left hand. I can't do that, Nicole said calmly. This device contains backup evidence that will only be released if I'm killed or incapacitated. Consider it insurance that I make it to trial alive. Agent Matthews stepped closer, his weapon trained on Richard Corleone. Sir, you're under arrest for the murder of Detective Daniel Wick and Elizabeth Corleone. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane. Richard screamed. I'm a respected businessman. I have connections in Washington. You can't just. Actually, we can. Agent Matthews nodded to his team, who immediately moved to restrain Richard. We've been investigating the Corleone empire for 18 months. We just needed someone on the inside willing to talk. Adrian's blood turned to ice. Someone on the inside? Agent Matthews looked at Nicole with something that might have been respect. Ms. Wick has been working with us for over a year. Every recording, every document, every piece of evidence, it's all been carefully catalogued and verified. The room spun around Adrian. You've been working with the FBI. Nicole's eyes met his, and he saw the truth there. I'm sorry, Adrian. I had to. It was the only way to make sure your father couldn't escape justice again. So everything, the maid job, the romance, all of it, was real, Nicole said desperately. The feelings were real, Adrian. That part was never fake. Hey everyone, we're watching Adrian's world completely implode in real time. The woman he loves has been an FBI informant this entire time. Talk about layers of deception. Drop a comment and let me know, do you think Nicole's feelings for Adrian are genuine, or has this whole romance been part of her undercover operation? And don't forget to subscribe because we're about to dive into even deeper revelations. But Adrian was staring at her like she was a stranger. How long have you been FBI? I'm not FBI, Nicole said quietly. I'm a private investigator. Have been for 15 years, ever since I recovered from the explosion. I specialize in cases involving police corruption and organized crime. Another revelation that felt like a physical blow. So you were never really a maid. I was whatever I needed to be to get close to your father. But Adrian, please understand. Ms. Wick, Agent Matthews interrupted, we need to debrief you immediately. And Mr. Corleone, the younger Mr. Corleone, will need your statement as well. Adrian looked around the study that had been his father's sanctuary for as long as he could remember. The leather chairs where he'd learned about business. The walls lined with books he'd been taught to revere. The desk where he'd signed his first corporate documents. All of it built on blood. All of it meaningless. "Agent Matthews," he said quietly, "I want to make a deal." Nicole's eyes went wide. "Adrian, no." "What kind of deal?" the agent asked. "I'll give you everything. Every file, every contact, every dirty secret about the Corleone business operations. In exchange, I want immunity for Nicole Wick." "That's not how this works, son," Agent Matthews said. "Ms. Wick committed federal crimes." "As part of an investigation," Adrian interrupted. "As someone trying to expose a criminal enterprise that had already murdered her brother and attempted to murder her. She's a victim, not a criminal." Nicole was shaking her head frantically. "Adrian, don't do this. Don't sacrifice yourself for me." "I'm not sacrificing myself," Adrian said, looking directly at her. "I'm finally doing something worth doing with my life." The grandfather clock chimed 12:45 a.m. In the distance, more sirens wailed as additional law enforcement descended on the Corleone estate. Agent Matthews spoke quietly into his radio, then looked back at Adrian. "We'll consider your proposal. But first, Ms. Wick needs medical attention." "Medical attention?" Adrian's heart stopped. "Why?" Nicole swayed slightly on her feet, and Adrian saw what he'd missed in all the chaos. A small puncture wound on her neck, barely visible beneath her hair. "The ricin," she whispered. "I lied about lying. I'm sorry, Adrian. I'm so sorry." She collapsed, and Adrian caught her just as the dead man's switch fell from her fingers. The device hit the marble floor and shattered. But it was too late to matter. Because as Nicole went limp in Adrian's arms, her phone buzzed with an automated message, "Upload complete. File successfully transmitted to 847 news outlets worldwide." The hospital smelled like antiseptic and broken dreams. Adrian sat in the intensive care unit waiting room, his $1,000 suit wrinkled and stained with Nicole's blood, watching news vans multiply in the parking lot like vultures circling carrion. Every screen in the building was broadcasting the same story: Corleone Empire exposed. Recordings reveal decades of murder and corruption. But Adrian couldn't focus on the news. All he could see was Nicole's face as the paramedics worked on her, pale, peaceful, slipping away from him with every labored breath. "Mr. Corleone?" Dr. Sarah Mitchell emerged from the ICU, her expression carefully neutral. "We need to talk." Adrian's heart hammered against his ribs. "Is she alive?" "Barely. The ricin has caused severe organ damage, but we caught it early enough that we might be able to counteract some of the effects." Dr. Mitchell sat down beside him. "However, there's something else. Something we found in her bloodstream that changes everything." "What do you mean?" "Mr. Corleone, the substance in Ms. Wick's system isn't ricin. It's a synthetic compound I've never seen before. Something designed to mimic ricin poisoning, but with a very different purpose." The waiting room felt like it was spinning. "I don't understand." "Neither did we, until we ran a full toxicology panel. This compound, it's not meant to kill. It's meant to induce a death-like coma. Slow the heart rate and breathing to almost nothing, make the victim appear deceased, then naturally metabolize out of the system within 48 hours. Adrian stared at her. "You're saying Nicole isn't dying?" "I'm saying someone gave her a very sophisticated drug designed to fake her death. The question is why." Dr. Mitchell's expression hardened. And who had access to something this advanced? Before Adrian could respond, Agent Matthews appeared in the doorway, his face grim. "Mr. Corleone, we need to talk. Now." They moved to a private conference room down the hall. Through the window, Adrian could see more FBI vehicles arriving, their lights painting the hospital walls in red and blue. "Your father is talking," Agent Matthews said without preamble. "And what he's telling us changes everything we thought we knew about this case." "What do you mean?" Agent Matthews opened a tablet and played a recording. Richard Corleone's voice filled the room, hollow and defeated. "Nicole Wick was never supposed to be a threat. She was supposed to be the solution. I didn't hire her to kill my son, I hired her to save him." Adrian felt the floor drop away beneath him. Save him. The recording continued. "There are people, dangerous people, who've been planning to eliminate the Corleone family for years. Competitors, enemies we made during our rise to power. They've been patient, methodical, waiting for the right moment to destroy everything we've built." Agent Matthews paused the recording. "Your father claims that someone has put a contract on your life. That Nicole Wick was brought in not as an assassin, but as protection." "That's impossible," she said. She said what she needed to say to maintain her cover. Agent Matthews played another section of the recording. "The real threat is Alexander Volkov, Russian oligarch. We destroyed his shipping empire in the early 2000s, cost him billions. He's been planning his revenge ever since." Adrian's blood turned to ice. He knew that name. Alexander Volkov, a man who collected vengeance like other people collected stamps. "According to your father," Agent Matthews continued, "Volkov's people have infiltrated law enforcement, the medical system, even our own organization. The plan was to eliminate you and your father, then move in on the Corleone assets while they were tied up in probate. So Nicole was hired by your father to go undercover and identify Volkov's people. The fake ricin, the recordings, the supposed revenge plot, all of it was designed to flush out the real assassins." Adrian felt like he was drowning in quicksand. "But she said she was working with you. With the FBI." Agent Matthews' expression darkened. "That's where this gets complicated. Ms. Wick was working with someone she believed was FBI. But the person she's been reporting to, Agent Sarah Chun, doesn't exist. Never has." The revelation hit Adrian like a sledgehammer. Someone's been impersonating federal agents for over a year, feeding her information, giving her assignments, making her believe she was part of an official investigation. Agent Matthews leaned forward. "The question is, was Nicole Wick a victim of this deception, or was she part of it?" Before Adrian could process this information fully, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. * Your girlfriend isn't who you think she is. Room 1247. Come alone, or she dies for real this time. V***. Adrian showed the message to Agent Matthews, whose face went pale. "Volkov," the agent breathed. "He's here. In the hospital." "How is that possible?" "Because he's not just after your money, Mr. Corleone. He's after something much more valuable." Agent Matthews stood quickly. "We need to evacuate the building. Now. What's more valuable than $12 billion? The list." Adrian stared at him. "What list?" "Your father didn't just run a criminal empire. He ran an intelligence network. For 30 years, he's been collecting information on politicians, judges, CEOs, foreign nationals, anyone with power. Blackmail material, financial records, personal secrets. It's all stored in a single encrypted database." Adrian felt sick. "And Volkov wants it. Volkov wants to use it to control half the free world. And he thinks Nicole Wick knows how to access it." They were interrupted by Dr. Mitchell's voice over the intercom. "Security to the ICU immediately. We have a situation in room 1247. Nicole's room." Adrian was running before he realized he'd moved. Agent Matthews shouted behind him, something about backup and protocol, but Adrian didn't care. Nicole was in danger, and nothing else mattered. He burst into the ICU to find chaos. Monitors were screaming alarms, and Nicole's bed was empty. The window was open, cold night air streaming into the room. But it wasn't the empty bed that stopped Adrian's heart. It was the woman standing by the window, very much alive and very much not dying. Nicole turned toward him, and Adrian saw that all traces of her scars were gone. Her face was perfect, unmarked, beautiful in a way that made his chest ache. "Hello, Adrian," she said, and her voice was different too. Stronger. More confident. The voice of someone who'd never been a victim of anything. "Nicole." Adrian's voice cracked. "How your face?" "Prosthetics," she said simply. "Very expensive ones. I've been wearing them for 3 years." The room tilted around Adrian. "You were never scarred?" "Oh, I was scarred. Just not on my face." Nicole, or whoever she really was, smiled, and it was sharp as broken glass. "Tell me, Adrian, did you really think your father was smart enough to plan something this complex? Did you think he had the resources to infiltrate the FBI, create fake identities, develop synthetic compounds that mimic ricin poisoning?" Adrian backed toward the door, but it slammed shut behind him. 2 men in hospital scrubs stepped out of the shadows, men with the cold eyes of professional killers. "My name isn't Nicole Wick," the woman continued. "It's Katerina Volkov. Alexander is my father. And you, dear Adrian, are going to help me destroy everything your family has ever built." The world exploded into fragments around Adrian. "You're Russian." "Half Russian, half American. Born in Moscow, educated in New York. I speak 7 languages fluently and have advanced degrees in psychology, computer science, and biochemistry." Katerina, not Nicole, moved closer. "Did you really think someone like me would fall in love with someone like you?" Adrian felt like he was being skinned alive. "Everything, the maid job, the romance, the way you looked at me, was a performance. And I must say, you were a wonderfully receptive audience." Her laugh was silver poison. 3 years, Adrian. 3 years of pretending to care about your pathetic loneliness, your daddy issues, your desperate need to be loved. One of the men handed her a tablet. Adrian could see it was connected to some kind of banking interface. "Now," Katerina said cheerfully, "you're going to transfer the remaining $3 billion in the Corleone accounts to these numbers. And then you're going to give me the access codes to your father's intelligence database." "I don't know any access codes," Adrian said desperately. "Oh, but you do. You've always known them. Your father embedded them in your memory when you were a child. Dates, numbers, phrases that seemed meaningless but were actually the keys to his entire operation." Katerina's smile was predatory. "Your mother's birthday. The day she died. The coordinates of her grave. The number of roses you put on her headstone every year." Adrian's blood turned to acid. Even his grief had been weaponized by his father. "And if I refuse?" Katerina gestured to the window. "This hospital has 847 patients. My father has people positioned throughout the building. 1 word from me, and they all die. Starting with the children's ward." Adrian stared at this woman, this stranger wearing the face of the person he'd loved, and realized that everything he believed about his life had been a lie. But there was one thing she was wrong about. "You made one mistake, Katerina," he said quietly. "Oh? And what's that?" "You assumed I was the same broken man you've been manipulating for 3 years." Adrian reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small device, identical to the dead man's which Nicole had carried. "But I've been learning. From you. From your father. From the best liars in the world." Katerina's eyes widened. "What is that?" "Insurance," Adrian said simply. "While you were playing your games, I was copying every file from my father's database. Every secret, every piece of blackmail material, every name on every list." He held up the device. And in exactly 60 seconds, unless I enter a code, all of it gets uploaded to every intelligence agency in the world. For the first time since he'd known her, Katerina looked genuinely afraid. You're bluffing. Am I? Tell me, Katerina, what happens to your father's empire when the CIA, MI6, and every other three-letter agency on the planet learns exactly how he's been operating? When they get a complete list of his assets, his people, his methods. Adrian could see the calculations running behind her eyes. The same cold intelligence that had fooled him for 3 years was now working against her. 50 seconds, Adrian said calmly. And unlike your fake ricin and your synthetic death compounds, this device is exactly what it appears to be. The two men in scrubs raised their weapons, but Katerina held up a hand to stop them. What do you want? She asked. Adrian smiled, and for the first time in his life, it felt like his father's smile. Cold. Calculating. Victorious. I want the real Nicole Wick. The silence in the hospital room stretched like a blade across Adrian's throat. Katerina Volkov, the woman who'd stolen 3 years of his life, his heart, his ability to trust, stared at him with eyes that had never held love. Only calculation. The real Nicole Wick, she repeated, and her laugh was winter wind through cemetery stones. Oh, Adrian. Sweet, naive Adrian. You still don't understand, do you? 40 seconds, Adrian said, his finger hovering over the dead man's switch. But something in Katerina's expression made his blood freeze. There is no real Nicole Wick, she said softly. There never was. Adrian's world tilted. What? Detective Daniel Wick never had a sister. He was an only child. Nicole Wick, the woman you fell in love with, was a fiction. A character I created based on police files and psychological profiles. Katerina moved closer, and Adrian saw the truth reflected in her eyes. I studied you for years before I ever set foot in your house. Learned your mother's favorite songs, your childhood fears, the exact type of woman who would make you feel safe. Then I became her. The device trembled in Adrian's hand. That's impossible. The photographs. Doctored. The scars were prosthetics, remember? It wasn't hard to create a fictional past for a fictional person. Katerina's smile was sharp as surgical steel. I am the only Nicole Wick who has ever existed. And I was never yours. Adrian felt something fundamental break inside his chest. The brother, Daniel Wick. Oh, he was real. A detective who got too close to your father's operation. But he died alone, Adrian. No sister to mourn him. No one to seek justice for his murder. Just another casualty of the Corleone Empire. 25 seconds, Adrian whispered, but the fight was draining out of him like blood from a severed artery. You want to know the beautiful part? Katerina continued relentlessly. My father didn't just want your money or your father's blackmail files. He wanted to destroy you completely. To take everything that made you human and twist it into a weapon against yourself. Adrian stared at her, this perfect stranger wearing the face of his dreams. Why? Because 30 years ago, your father didn't just destroy my father's shipping empire. He destroyed his family. My mother, my younger brother, my grandparents. They were all on a yacht that suffered a very convenient explosion. The authorities called it a gas leak. An accident. The room was spinning around Adrian. How many people has my family killed? Does it matter? The dead don't count anymore, Adrian. Only the living. And right now, you're going to choose who lives and who dies. She gestured toward the window, and Adrian saw what he'd missed in his shock. The hospital parking lot was surrounded by black SUVs. Men in tactical gear were taking positions around the building. My father's people, Katerina explained. They've been waiting for my signal. One word from me, and this hospital becomes a war zone. 847 patients, Adrian. including 63 children in the pediatric ward. You wouldn't. Wouldn't I? Katerina pulled out her phone and scrolled to a contact labeled Winter King. My father didn't give me the name Katerina by accident. It means pure. But purity, Adrian, requires sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice includes innocence. Adrian's finger was slick with sweat on the device trigger. 15 seconds. Here's what's going to happen, Katerina continued, her voice clinical as a surgeon's. You're going to disable that device. You're going to transfer the remaining $3 billion. You're going to give me access to your father's files. And then you're going to walk out of this hospital and disappear forever. And if I don't? Then I make one phone call, and every person in this building dies. Including Agent Matthews and his team, who are currently trapped in the elevator between floors 3 and 4. She showed him her phone screen, security footage of the FBI agents pounding on the elevator doors. Yes, Adrian. We control the building's systems. We have for weeks. Adrian felt the last of his hope crumble. What guarantee do I have that you'll let them go? None. But if you refuse, they die for certain. This way, at least some of them might survive. 10 seconds, Adrian said, but his voice was hollow. You know what the cruelest part is. Katerina moved close enough that he could smell her perfume, vanilla, the scent that had comforted him through countless sleepless nights. I really did study you, Adrian. Every report card, every girlfriend, every moment of joy and pain in your privileged little life. And do you know what I found? 5 seconds. You're just like your father. Weak. Selfish. Willing to sacrifice anyone to protect what's yours. Her smile was beautiful and terrible. The only difference is that he at least fought for his empire. You're giving up without firing a shot. Adrian looked at the device in his hand. At the woman who destroyed his ability to love. At the window showing a hospital full of innocent people who would die because of his family's sins. Time's up, Katerina whispered. Adrian closed his eyes and pressed the button. But instead of uploading files or triggering alarms, the device made a soft beeping sound and went dark. Katerina's laughter filled the room. Did you really think we wouldn't know about your little insurance policy? We've been monitoring your communications for months. That device was disabled before you even walked into this room. Adrian stared at the useless piece of plastic in his hand. How? Because unlike you, we're professionals. We've been planning this operation for 5 years. Every contingency, every backup plan, every possible variable. Katerina took the dead device from his numb fingers. Even your touching little rebellion was anticipated. One of the men in scrubs, who Adrian now realized wasn't medical personnel, stepped forward with a tablet. Banking interfaces glowed on the screen. The transfers, Mr. Corleone. Now. Adrian looked at the numbers. $3 billion, everything that remained of his family's fortune. His employees' pensions. His mother's charitable foundation. The last clean money in the Corleone empire. I need biometric confirmation, he said quietly. Of course you do. Katerina held up a small scanner. Fingerprint and retinal scan. And Adrian? If you try anything clever, remember that we can kill everyone in this building in under 60 seconds. Adrian pressed his thumb to the scanner and leaned forward for the retinal scan. As the device chirped its confirmation, he watched $3 billion vanish from the Corleone accounts forever. Excellent, Katerina said. Now the database access codes. I told you I don't know. Your mother's birthday, she interrupted. April 15, 1962. The day she died, September 3, 1999. The coordinates of her grave, 40.7589, 73.9851. The number of roses you put on her headstone every year, 12, one for each year of your life when she died. Adrian felt his father's final betrayal wash over him. Even his grief had been a lie, programmed into him as a security system. How did you know? Because I've been inside your head for 3 years, Adrian. I know how you think, how you feel, how you break. Katerina input the codes into her tablet. And now I know how you die. The database unlocked with a soft chime. Thousands of files filled the screen. Politicians, judges, business leaders, foreign nationals. 30 years of blackmail material that could topple governments. Beautiful, Katerina breathed. My father will be so pleased. What happens now? Adrian asked. Now? Now you become a tragic footnote in the Corleone legacy. The weak son who couldn't handle the truth about his family. Who took his own life rather than face the consequences of his father's crimes. She pulled a gun from beneath her hospital gown, sleek, professional, silenced. The official story will be that you suffered a complete breakdown when you learned about your father's arrest. Shot yourself in the hospital while visiting your dying lover. Very romantic. Very final. Adrian looked around the room, at the 2 fake orderlies, at the woman who'd taught him what love felt like before tearing his heart out, at the window overlooking a hospital full of innocent people. You're going to kill me. I'm going to free you, Katerina corrected. From the weight of your family's sins. From the burden of living with what you've learned. From the pain of knowing that everything you ever loved was a lie. She raised the gun, and Adrian saw his reflection in her eyes, broken, defeated, alone. Any last words? Adrian thought about his mother, dead 15 years because she tried to protect him. About Detective Daniel Wick, killed for seeking justice. About the real Nicole Wick who'd never existed, but who'd been more real to him than anything else in his life. Yes, he said quietly. I forgive you. Katerina's finger hesitated on the trigger. What? I forgive you for falling in love with me. Her composure cracked for just a moment. I never. Yes, you did. Somewhere in the last 3 years, between the lies and the performance and the revenge, you fell in love with me too. I can see it in your eyes. The guilt. The regret. The part of you that wishes this could have been different. You're delusional. Am I? Then why are your hands shaking? Why haven't you pulled the trigger yet? Adrian stepped closer, close enough that the gun barrel pressed against his chest. Because despite everything, despite the mission, despite your father, despite the hate that's been driving you for 30 years, you fell in love with the man you came here to destroy. Tears were running down Katerina's perfect, unmarked cheeks. It doesn't matter what I feel. It doesn't change anything. It changes everything. Because love is the one thing you can't fake, can't control, can't weaponize. And now you have to choose, your father's revenge, or the man who made you feel human again. For a moment, just a moment, Adrian thought he'd reached her. Thought maybe love could triumph over decades of hate and planning. Then Katerina's expression hardened back into ice. You're right, she said. I did fall in love with you. And that's exactly why you have to die. She pulled the trigger. The gunshot echoed through the hospital room like the end of the world. The gunshot echoed through the hospital room, but Adrian felt no pain. He opened his eyes to see Katerina staring in shock at the smoking barrel of her weapon, a weapon that had fired into the ceiling instead of his chest. One of the fake orderlies lay crumpled on the floor, blood pooling beneath his head. What? Katerina spun around to see Agent Matthews standing in the doorway, his own weapon drawn, smoke rising from the barrel. Federal agents. Matthews barked. Drop your weapons. But it wasn't Matthews who'd saved Adrian's life. It was the second fake orderly, who was now pointing his gun at Katerina's back. Ma'am, the man said in a distinctly American accent, CIA Agent David Park. You're under arrest for conspiracy, murder, and about 40 other federal crimes. Katerina's face went white as hospital sheets. That's impossible. My father owns half the intelligence community. Your father owns the half we wanted him to own, Agent Park replied calmly. The other half has been watching him for 5 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Adrian's legs gave out, and he collapsed into the visitor's chair. I don't understand. Agent Matthews entered the room, followed by 6 more federal agents. Mr. Corleone, what you've witnessed tonight is the culmination of Operation Winter's End, a joint CIA-FBI operation designed to bring down both the Corleone Empire and Alexander Volkov's network. But Nicole, Katerina, she said you didn't exist. That Agent Chun was fake. Agent Chun is very real, Matthews said. She's been running point on this operation for 3 years. And she's been very impressed with your performance. The room spun around Adrian. My performance? Did you really think we'd leave the son of a criminal mastermind completely unmonitored? Agent Park smiled grimly. We've been watching you since you were 18, Mr. Corleone. Waiting to see if you'd follow in your father's footsteps or choose a different path. Everything, the maid job, the romance, my father's arrest tonight, was carefully orchestrated to force both you and Volkov into the open. Agent Matthews pulled out a tablet showing security footage. Your father has been cooperating with us for 18 months. Ever since we informed him that Volkov had put contracts on both your lives. Adrian stared at the screen, watching his father, not the broken, desperate man from earlier, but someone alert and calculating, speaking quietly with federal agents. He's been working with you. Terminal cancer has a way of clarifying a man's priorities, Matthews said. Your father realized that his only chance of protecting you was to help us destroy Volkov completely. But the recordings, Nicole's evidence, all carefully prepared by your father and our technical team. We needed Volkov to believe his daughter's operation was succeeding. We needed him to commit resources, reveal his network, show us the full scope of his organization. Agent Park gestured toward Katerina, who was now in handcuffs but listening to every word. Did you think a 17-year-old girl could infiltrate the FBI, develop synthetic compounds, and mastermind a billion-dollar heist? She's talented, but she's not magic. Adrian looked at Katerina, really looked at her, and saw something he'd missed in his shock and heartbreak. Fear. Confusion. The expression of someone realizing they'd been played. You didn't know, he said quietly. You thought you were in control, but you were just another piece on the board. Katerina's composure finally cracked completely. My father, he said, he promised. Your father used you, Agent Park said bluntly. The same way he's used everyone in his organization. You were expendable, Ms. Volkov. A pawn he was willing to sacrifice to get what he wanted. That's not true. Katerina screamed. He loves me. I'm his daughter. Agent Matthews showed her another tablet. This one displayed a recorded conversation, Alexander Volkov speaking to someone off camera. Katerina has served her purpose. If the operation fails, eliminate her along with the Corleone boy. We cannot afford loose ends. The blood drained from Katerina's face as she heard her father's voice condemn her to death. The man you were speaking to earlier, the second fake orderly who was going to help you kill Adrian? Agent Park gestured toward the corpse on the floor. He had orders to shoot you both the moment the database download was complete. Adrian watched Katerina's world crumble the same way his had just minutes before. The love you felt for me, he said quietly. That wasn't part of your father's plan, was it? She looked at him through her tears, the first genuine emotion he'd seen from her all night. No. It wasn't supposed to happen. I was supposed to seduce you, manipulate you, destroy you. But you. Her voice broke. You were kind to me. You saw me as a person, not a weapon. You made me remember what it felt like to be human. Which is exactly what we were counting on, Agent Matthews said. Love is the one thing that can't be faked indefinitely. We knew that if we gave you enough time together, real feelings would develop. And once they did, neither of you would be able to go through with your respective missions. Adrian stared at him. My mission? Did you think your sudden moral awakening was entirely organic? Agent Park smiled. For months, we've been feeding you information designed to make you question your family's business. Anonymous tips about suspicious deaths. Financial discrepancies that didn't quite add up. We needed you to reach the point where you'd be willing to turn against your father. So tonight, calling the FBI, confessing everything, was exactly what we needed you to do. It gave us probable cause to arrest your father officially and seize all of his assets. More importantly, it convinced Volkov that his plan was working perfectly. Adrian felt like he was drowning in revelations. How much of my life has been manipulated? Less than you think, more than you'd like, Agent Matthews said honestly. Your feelings for Nicole, for the character Katerina created, those were real. Your horror at learning about your father's crimes was genuine. Your desire to break free from the family business came from your own conscience. But the woman I fell in love with never existed. Agent Matthews and Agent Park exchanged a look. About that, Matthews said slowly. There's something else you need to know. He pulled out another tablet, this one showing a photograph. A young woman with green eyes and dark hair, her face unmarked by scars. She was standing in what looked like a college graduation ceremony, smiling at the camera. Meet the real Nicole Wick, Agent Matthews said. Age 28. Private investigator specializing in corporate fraud. She's been working undercover in your company for 6 months, documenting your father's crimes from the inside. Adrian's heart stopped. That's impossible. I would have seen her. You did see her. Every day. Agent Park smiled. She was your personal assistant, Jennifer Parker. The quiet woman who brought you coffee, organized your meetings, and listened to you talk about your problems with the mysterious maid you were falling in love with. The world tilted so violently that Adrian thought he might pass out. Jennifer Parker, his assistant who'd started 6 months ago, who'd been increasingly concerned about his emotional state, who'd always seemed to understand him better than she should have. Jennifer is Nicole. Has been all along. She's also the one who's been feeding us information about your daily routine, your psychological state, your growing attachment to Katerina. Agent Matthews showed him security footage from his office, Jennifer Parker, but now that he knew, Adrian could see the resemblance to the graduation photo. She's been just as invested in this operation's success as we have. Where is she now? Waiting in protective custody, Agent Park said. We needed to keep her safe in case Volkov's people tried to eliminate potential witnesses. Adrian stared at the photograph of the real Nicole Wick. A woman who'd been watching him, protecting him, caring about him from the shadows while he'd been falling in love with his family's enemy. How does she feel about me? Agent Matthews smiled for the first time all night. Why don't you ask her yourself? The door opened, and Jennifer Parker, Nicole Wick, walked into the room. She was still wearing the conservative business attire she favored as his assistant, but now Adrian could see past the professional facade to the woman beneath. Strong, intelligent, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with theatrical scars or manufactured vulnerability. Hello, Adrian, she said quietly. I think we have a lot to talk about. Adrian stood slowly, his legs shaking. You're real. Very real. And very sorry about the deception. Nicole's eyes were filled with the same pain he felt, but also very proud of the man you've become tonight. Proud. You chose justice over loyalty, truth over comfort. You were willing to sacrifice everything, your fortune, your family, your life, to do what was right. Nicole stepped closer. That's not the action of a weak man, Adrian. That's the action of a hero. Behind them, Katerina made a sound like a wounded animal. "This is touching," she snarled, "but it doesn't change anything. My father still has people in this hospital. People who will kill everyone here if I don't report in within the next 10 minutes. Agent Park checked his watch. "Actually, your father's people surrendered about 5 minutes ago. Turns out they were all undercover federal agents too." Katerina's face went white. "What?" "Operation Winter's End, Ms. Volkov. We've been infiltrating your father's organization for 3 years. Every person he sent to this hospital, every backup plan he made, every contingency he prepared for, we knew about all of it." "That's impossible." "Your father is under arrest in Moscow as we speak," Agent Matthews said. "Along with every major figure in his organization. It's over, Katerina. All of it." For a moment, the only sound in the room was Katerina's ragged breathing. Then she laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think you've won," she said. "But you have no idea what you've unleashed. My father's empire doesn't die with him. There are others. Worse things waiting in the shadows. We'll deal with them when the time comes," Agent Park said calmly. "But right now, our concern is you." He turned to Adrian and Nicole. "We'll need extensive debriefings from both of you. The operation isn't over until we've dismantled every aspect of both criminal organizations." "And after that?" Adrian asked. Agent Matthews smiled. "After that, you're both free to build whatever life you want. Clean money, clean consciences, clean slates." Adrian looked at Nicole, the real Nicole, the woman who'd been protecting him while he'd been falling in love with his enemy. "Would you like to have coffee sometime? Without any ulterior motives or hidden agendas." Nicole's smile was like sunrise after the longest night of his life. "I'd like that very much." As federal agents led Katerina out of the room, she turned back one last time. "Adrian," she called out. He looked at her, this woman who destroyed and saved him, who'd taught him about love and betrayal in equal measure. "What we had," she said quietly. "The feelings, the connection, that was real, wasn't it? Even if everything else was a lie." Adrian considered her question. The woman who'd manipulated him, stolen from him, tried to kill him. The woman who'd also loved him, protected him from her father's worst plans, and ultimately chosen to spare his life when she could have pulled the trigger. "Yes," he said finally. "It was real. And that's what makes it so tragic." Katerina nodded once, then allowed herself to be led away into whatever justice awaited her. Adrian turned back to Nicole, the real Nicole, the woman with honest eyes and genuine smiles. "So what happens now?" "Now we start over," Nicole said simply. "No lies, no games, no hidden agendas. Just two people getting to know each other for real this time." Adrian thought about his destroyed empire, his imprisoned father, the fortune that had been built on blood and lies. None of it mattered anymore. For the first time in his life, he was free. "I'd like that," he said. "I'd like that very much." 6 months later, Adrian stood in the witness box of Federal District Court, Manhattan, his hand on the Bible as the prosecutor prepared to ask the questions that would finally bring justice to decades of horror. The courtroom was packed, reporters, victims' families, law enforcement officials, and curious spectators all waiting to hear the testimony that would seal the fate of two of the most dangerous criminal enterprises in modern history. But Adrian's eyes found only one face in the crowd, Nicole Wick, sitting in the second row, her real smile offering him the strength he needed for what came next. "Mr. Corleone," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about the night of March 15th, when you learned the truth about your father's business operations." Adrian took a deep breath. Over the past 6 months, he'd told this story dozens of times to FBI agents, CIA operatives, and federal prosecutors. But this was different. This was the final accounting. "I came home early from a business trip and found what I thought was my maid, Nicole Wick, holding my father at gunpoint. What I didn't know was that the woman I knew as Nicole was actually Katerina Volkov, daughter of Russian crime lord Alexander Volkov. And what I discovered that night changed everything I thought I knew about my family. The prosecutor walked him through the timeline methodically. The fake ricin poisoning. The revelation about his mother's murder. The systematic theft of billions of dollars. The discovery that his father had been killing people for 30 years to protect his empire. At what point did you realize you were not just a witness to these crimes, but potentially complicit in them? Adrian's voice was steady. When I understood that every dollar I'd ever inherited, every business deal I'd ever made, every life of privilege I'd ever lived, it was all built on the blood of innocent people. My mother. Detective Daniel Wick. Countless others whose names I'll probably never know. And what did you choose to do with that knowledge? I chose to turn my father in myself. To cooperate fully with law enforcement. To help bring justice to the families who've been waiting decades for the truth. The defense attorney, a shark in an expensive suit hired by what remained of the Corleone legal team, stood for cross-examination. Mr. Corleone, isn't it true that you only turned against your father when you learned you were about to lose everything anyway? When you realized that Katerina Volkov had already stolen your fortune and destroyed your empire? Adrian met the lawyer's eyes without flinching. No. I turned against my father when I learned he was a murderer. The money was irrelevant. Really? $12 billion was irrelevant. Completely. Blood money has no value to me. But you kept $3 billion for yourself. Which I donated entirely to victims' compensation funds and criminal justice reform organizations, Adrian interrupted. Every penny. I kept nothing. The courtroom murmured at this revelation. Adrian had made the decision quietly, without fanfare, wanting the focus to remain on justice rather than his personal redemption. So you're telling this court that you willingly gave up a fortune worth billions of dollars? I'm telling this court that some things are more valuable than money. Justice. Truth. The ability to look at yourself in the mirror without seeing a monster. The defense attorney sat down, clearly recognizing a losing battle. The prosecutor called character witnesses, FBI agents who'd worked with Adrian during the investigation, victims' families who'd met with him personally to hear his apologies, charity workers who'd seen him volunteer anonymously at organizations serving the communities his family had harmed. But the most powerful testimony came from an unexpected source. Your Honor, the prosecutor announced, the government calls Alexander Volkov. The courtroom erupted as the Russian crime lord was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit and heavy shackles. Even restrained and imprisoned, Volkov radiated the kind of cold menace that had made him one of the most feared men in the world. Mr. Volkov, the prosecutor began, you orchestrated a complex operation to infiltrate and destroy the Corleone organization. Can you tell the court why? Volkov's English was perfect, but his accent made every word sound like a threat. Richard Corleone murdered my wife and children 30 years ago. I spent 3 decades planning my revenge. And part of that revenge involved using your daughter as an undercover operative? For the first time, something almost like emotion flickered in Volkov's eyes. Katerina volunteered. She wanted to honor her mother's memory. By seducing and manipulating an innocent man? Adrian Corleone was never innocent, Volkov snarled. He lived off blood money his entire life. He deserved whatever happened to him. Adrian watched this exchange with fascination and horror. Here was the man who'd orchestrated 3 years of psychological warfare against him, who'd turned his daughter into a weapon, who'd been willing to kill hundreds of innocent people to achieve his goals. Mr. Volkov, the prosecutor continued, when you learned that your daughter had developed genuine feelings for Adrian Corleone, what was your response? I ordered her to complete the mission anyway. Feelings are a weakness that cannot be tolerated in our business. And when she began to show reluctance, Volkov's expression hardened. I made it clear that if she failed to eliminate both Adrian and his father, she would be eliminated herself. The courtroom was dead silent. Even the reporters had stopped typing. You were prepared to have your own daughter killed? Family is a luxury men like me cannot afford, Volkov said simply. Power requires sacrifice. Adrian felt sick. This was the man whose approval Katerina had spent her entire life seeking, whose love she tried to earn through 3 years of perfect performance and manipulation. The defense attorney declined to cross-examine Volkov. There was no defense for a man who'd admit to planning his own daughter's murder. As Volkov was led away, his eyes found Adrian's. There was no apology there, no regret. Only the cold calculation of a predator who regretted nothing except getting caught. The prosecution's final witness was the most devastating of all. Your Honor, the government calls Richard Corleone. Adrian's father was wheeled into the courtroom in a hospital bed, his cancer having progressed rapidly during his months in federal custody. He was a shadow of the man who'd once commanded a billion-dollar empire, but his eyes were clearer than Adrian had ever seen them. Mr. Corleone, the prosecutor said gently, you've agreed to testify against your former associates in exchange for a reduced sentence. Can you tell the court why? Richard's voice was barely above a whisper, but the courtroom's acoustics carried every word. Because I'm dying. And I want to die knowing that I finally did one thing right. Can you tell the court about the murder of Detective Daniel Wick? I killed him, Richard said simply. He discovered evidence that would have sent me to prison for previous crimes. So I had him eliminated and made it look like a car accident. And Elizabeth Corleone? Your wife. Richard's eyes found Adrian's across the courtroom. I killed her too. She was going to expose my business and take Adrian away from me. I couldn't let that happen. Adrian felt tears burning his eyes. Hearing the confession he'd known was coming still felt like being shot. Why are you testifying now, Mr. Corleone? Because I want my son to be free of this poison. I want him to have the life his mother dreamed of giving him. Richard's voice grew stronger. Adrian is a good man. Better than me. Better than everything I raised him to be. And he deserves a chance to build something clean. The defense attorney had no questions for a man who just confessed to multiple murders. During closing arguments, the prosecutor laid out the scope of the criminal enterprises that had finally been destroyed. The Corleone organization, 30 years of murder, extortion, and corruption that had touched every level of society. The Volkov Network, an international crime syndicate that had operated on 6 continents. But this case, the prosecutor concluded, is ultimately about choices. Richard Corleone chose power over family. Alexander Volkov chose revenge over love. Katerina Volkov chose loyalty to her father over her own humanity. He turned to Adrian. And Adrian Corleone chose justice over everything else in his life. He chose to sacrifice his fortune, his family, his entire identity to ensure that the truth finally came to light. The defense made their arguments about coercion and family pressure, but their hearts weren't in it. The evidence was overwhelming, the confessions complete. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Richard Corleone, guilty on all counts. Life in prison without possibility of parole. Alexander Volkov, guilty on all counts. Life in prison without possibility of parole. Katerina Volkov, guilty on conspiracy charges, but with consideration for her cooperation and the coercion she'd suffered. 25 years in federal prison, with possibility of parole in 12. As the verdicts were read, Adrian felt something he'd never experienced before: peace. Not happiness. There was too much pain and loss for that. But peace. The knowledge that justice had finally been served. The courtroom began to clear, but Adrian remained in his seat, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had just concluded. 3 years of deception, 6 months of investigation, and now it was over. Nicole appeared beside him, her hand gently touching his shoulder. "How do you feel?" she asked. Adrian considered the question. "Free," he said finally. "Terrified but free." Terrified. I've never had to build a life from nothing before. No family business, no inherited fortune, no predetermined path. He looked at her. Just me, making choices for the first time in my life. Nicole smiled. What's your first choice going to be? Adrian stood and took her hand. I'd like to take you to dinner. Somewhere that doesn't require reservations or credit checks or background investigations. Just a regular restaurant where two regular people can talk about regular things. I know just the place, Nicole said. But I should warn you, I'm a private investigator with trust issues and a tendency to psychoanalyze people. And I'm the son of a criminal who just gave away a fortune and has no idea what I want to do with my life. Sounds like we're perfect for each other. As they walked out of the courthouse together, Adrian saw Agent Matthews waiting by the exit. Congratulations, Matthews said. Your testimony was crucial to securing these convictions. What happens now? Adrian asked. Now you disappear into the witness protection program and live quietly for the rest of your life, Matthews said with a straight face. Adrian's heart sank until he saw the agent's barely concealed smile. I'm kidding, Matthews said. You're free to go wherever you want, do whatever you want. You've earned it. Just like that. Just like that. Though I should mention, there's been some interest from several federal agencies in hiring you as a consultant. Apparently, your insights into criminal psychology and white-collar crime could be valuable in future investigations. Adrian considered this. Fighting crime instead of enabling it? Something like that. Adrian looked at Nicole. What do you think? Want a partner? In crime fighting or in life? Both. Nicole's smile was radiant. Let's start with dinner and see where it goes from there. As they walked down the courthouse steps into the afternoon sunshine, Adrian thought about the journey that had brought him to this moment. The lies, the betrayal, the discovery of truths that had shattered his world. The choice to sacrifice everything he'd known for the chance to build something real. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Adrian. This is Katerina. I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know, I'm glad you found the real Nicole. You deserve someone who can love you without lies. Take care of yourself. K*. Adrian showed the message to Nicole. Do you think she meant that? I think she's trying to find some peace with what she did, Nicole said. Just like you are. Adrian deleted the message and put his phone away. The past was the past. What mattered now was the future he was finally free to choose. So, Nicole said as they reached the street, dinner first and then what? Adrian looked at the bustling city around them. Millions of people living honest lives, building real relationships, creating genuine happiness without manipulation or deception. Then we figure out how to be normal, he said. Nicole laughed. That sounds wonderfully boring. After the last 3 years, Adrian said, taking her hand, boring sounds perfect. As they disappeared into the crowd of ordinary people living ordinary lives, Adrian Corleone, son of a murdered mother and a criminal father, finally became what he'd always been meant to be, simply Adrian, a man in love with a woman who loved him back, both of them free to write their own story. Behind them, the courthouse stood as a monument to the justice that had finally been served. Ahead of them lay a future limited only by their imagination and bounded only by their commitment to truth. For the first time in his life, Adrian Corleone was exactly where he belonged. 2 years later. The small coffee shop on the outskirts of Portland was nothing like the corporate boardrooms and five-star restaurants that had defined Adrian's old life. Mismatched furniture, local art on exposed brick walls, the comforting hum of espresso machines and quiet conversation. It was perfect. Adrian looked up from his laptop as the bell above the door chimed, and his heart did the same thing it had done every day for 2 years, stopped for a moment, then resumed beating twice as fast. Nicole walked in wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, her smile lighting up the entire cafe. How's the book coming? she asked, sliding into the chair across from him and stealing a sip of his coffee. Chapter 12, Adrian said, closing the laptop. The part where the fictional billionaire realizes his entire life has been a lie. Can't imagine where you got that idea. Nicole's eyes sparkled with gentle teasing. Any word from your editor? She loves it. Says it's the most authentic portrayal of white-collar crime she's ever read. Adrian grinned. Apparently, having actually lived it gives the writing a certain credibility. Nicole laughed, the sound that had become Adrian's favorite music. Who would have thought that surviving a criminal conspiracy would be good for your literary career? From Billionaire to Barista, one man's journey from blood money to peace of mind working title, Adrian said. Though I'm thinking of changing it. To what? The real thing, a love story built on truth. Nicole's cheeks flushed pink. That's very romantic. But also terrible marketing. Good thing I'm not writing it for the money. And that was the truth. The advance from the publisher would pay their modest rent for 6 months. The royalties might stretch to a year if they were lucky. It was more money than Adrian had earned in his entire previous existence, because it was the first money he'd ever earned honestly. Speaking of which, Nicole said, pulling an envelope from her purse, this came to the office today. Adrian recognized the federal prison system logo and his father's careful handwriting. He'd been receiving these letters monthly for 2 years, never opened them, never responded to them, but never thrown them away either. You don't have to read it, Nicole said gently. You don't owe him anything. I know. Adrian turned the envelope over in his hands. But maybe I'm ready to. He opened it carefully and unfolded the single sheet of prison stationery. Adrian. I know you don't read these letters. I wouldn't either, in your place. But the doctors say I only have a few weeks left, so I'm hoping this one might be different. I'm not writing to ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, and I know you're not foolish enough to give it. I'm writing to tell you that I've been following your new life through the news articles about the trial, and I'm proud of you. You became the man your mother always knew you could be. You chose love over money, truth over comfort, justice over loyalty. You saved yourself from becoming me, and that's the only truly good thing to come out of my entire existence. I'm donating my body to medical research. Even in death, I want to serve some useful purpose for once. There won't be a funeral because there's nothing to celebrate. But I wanted you to know that my last conscious thoughts will be of you and your mother, and how much better the world is because you both existed. Live well, son. Love that good woman of yours. Build something beautiful. Your father, Adrian's hands were shaking as he finished reading. Nicole reached across the table and took them in hers, warm, steady, real. He's dying, Adrian said quietly. Are you okay? Adrian considered the question. 2 years ago, news of his father's impending death would have destroyed him, with guilt, with unresolved anger, with the weight of all their unfinished business. Now he felt sad, but also peaceful. Yes, he said, surprised to realize it was true. I am okay. He folded the letter and put it in his pocket. Not to treasure or torment himself with, but simply to remember. Richard Corleone had been a monster, but he'd also been a man who'd loved his son in the only way he knew how. That love had been poisonous, destructive, built on lies, but it had also been real. Nicole, Adrian said, suddenly unable to sit still. Walk with me. They left the coffee shop and wandered through downtown Portland, past food trucks and street musicians, through parks where children played while their parents watched with the relaxed vigilance of people who'd never had to worry about assassination attempts or corporate espionage. I've been thinking, Adrian said as they settled on a bench overlooking the river, about what comes next. After the book. After everything. You and me, I mean. This life we've built. Nicole's expression grew cautious. What about it? Adrian took her hands in his. It's been 2 years since we met, really met, without lies or hidden agendas or federal investigations complicating everything. 2 years of discovering who we are when we're not defined by trauma or revenge or family legacies. Adrian. I know what you're going to say. That it's too soon, that we're still healing, that we should take things slow. Actually, Nicole interrupted with a smile, I was going to say that I love you. And that whatever you're about to ask me, the answer is yes. Adrian's heart stopped. You don't even know what I'm going to ask. Don't I? Nicole's eyes were sparkling. Adrian Corleone, excuse me, Adrian Matthews now, are you about to propose to me? Adrian had legally changed his name 6 months after the trial, choosing Matthews to honor the FBI agent who'd helped save his life. It had felt like the final step in becoming someone new. Maybe, Adrian said, suddenly nervous. Would that be crazy? Completely insane, Nicole agreed. We're both damaged people with trust issues and complicated pasts. We have no money, no family connections, no safety net except each other. So that's a no? Nicole reached into her own pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Actually, it's a yes, and also a question of my own. Adrian stared at the box. You were going to propose to me? Great minds think alike. Nicole opened the box to reveal a simple gold band. I figured after 2 years of you making all the brave choices, it was my turn. Adrian laughed, deep, genuine laughter that felt like sunlight in his chest. So we're both proposing? Looks like it. And we're both saying yes. Looks like that too. Adrian pulled out his own small box. He'd been carrying it for 3 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Inside was a ring with a single, simple diamond. Nothing ostentatious or designed to impress. Just beautiful. Nicole Wick, he said formally, will you marry me? Adrian Matthews, she replied with equal solemnity, will you marry me? Yes. Yes. They slipped the rings onto each other's fingers as joggers passed by and ducks paddled in the river, and the world continued its ordinary, extraordinary business around them. So what now? Nicole asked, admiring her ring in the afternoon sunlight. Now we go home and plan a wedding, Adrian said. Small, simple, no press coverage, no corporate sponsors, no guest list that reads like a Fortune 500 directory. Just us. And Agent Matthews, if he'll give you away. And maybe Agent Park, he did save my life. And Dr. Mitchell from the hospital. And the people from the coffee shop. And Mrs. Henderson from next door who keeps bringing us vegetables from her garden. Adrian smiled. A wedding full of people who actually know us. What a concept. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the river flow toward the ocean, carrying with it all the debris and sediment of the past to make room for whatever came next. Do you ever miss it? Nicole asked quietly. The money, the power, the importance? Adrian considered the question honestly. Sometimes I miss the security. The feeling that I could solve any problem by writing a check. But I don't miss being afraid all the time. Afraid of who might be trying to kill me. Afraid of what terrible things my money was built on. Afraid that anyone who claimed to love me was really just after what I could give them. He squeezed her hand. I've never been happier than I am right now, sitting on a park bench with my fiancée, worrying about whether we can afford to serve more than pizza at our wedding. We could splurge on breadsticks, Nicole suggested. Let's not get crazy. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Soon they'd walk home to their tiny apartment above the bookstore, make dinner together, curl up on their second-hand couch to watch movies that didn't require them to analyze criminal psychology or witness testimony. I got a call today, Nicole said casually. From Agent Chun. There's a case in Seattle she wants us to consult on. Corporate fraud involving a tech startup. Us. Apparently, the combination of your inside knowledge of white-collar crime and my investigative skills makes us quite the team. Nicole grinned. Plus, it pays really well. Adrian raised an eyebrow. How well? Well enough that we could afford a real honeymoon. Maybe even one that involves a hotel instead of camping. I like camping. I know you do. But I also like the idea of room service and those little bottles of shampoo. Adrian laughed. So we're going into business together? We are if you want to. Matthews and Wick Consulting. Specializing in cases where the good guys need to think like the bad guys to win. Fighting crime together, Adrian mused. I like it. Plus, it means we get to travel, solve puzzles, help people, and use all our hard-earned trauma for something productive. You make psychological damage sound like a career asset. Isn't it? Before you all start scrolling to other videos, I need to hear from you. Are you as emotional about Adrian and Nicole's happy ending as I am right now? This story has been an absolute roller coaster of betrayal, love, and redemption. Drop a comment and let me know what your favorite moment was. And if you've made it this far, you're clearly part of our incredible community, so smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell because we have so many more heart-wrenching stories coming your way. As they walked home through the gathering dusk, Adrian felt something he'd never experienced in his previous life: certainty. Not the false certainty of inherited wealth and predetermined paths, but the real certainty that came from knowing exactly who he was and what he wanted. He wanted this woman beside him, with her honest smile and fearless heart. He wanted this simple life they'd built together, free from the weight of blood money and family sins. He wanted to use his knowledge of darkness to bring light to other people's lives. He wanted to wake up every morning grateful instead of guilty, excited instead of afraid. One more thing, Adrian said as they climbed the stairs to their apartment. When we have kids. When? Nicole stopped on the landing and raised an eyebrow. If. Maybe. Hypothetically. Adrian's cheeks reddened. If we have kids, I want them to know the whole truth. About where I came from, about what we survived, about why we chose this life instead of easier ones. Because I want them to understand that love isn't about what someone can give you or how they can benefit your life. Real love is about choosing to build something beautiful together, even when, especially when, it would be easier to walk away. Nicole stood on her toes and kissed him, soft, sweet, full of promise. That's the most romantic thing anyone's ever said to me. Really? More romantic than will you marry me? Much more romantic. Because it's about forever. They unlocked their door and stepped into their small, perfect home. The apartment where they'd learned to trust each other, to laugh together, to build a life based on truth instead of deception. Tomorrow, they'd start planning a wedding. Next month, they'd take on their first case together. Next year, they'd publish Adrian's book and help other people understand that it's never too late to choose justice over comfort. But tonight, they were simply Adrian and Nicole, two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of lies and built something real from the ashes of betrayal. As they settled onto their couch with takeout containers and a bottle of wine they'd been saving for a special occasion, Adrian realized that this was what happiness actually felt like. Not the hollow pleasure of expensive things or the temporary satisfaction of power over others, but the deep, abiding joy of being known completely and loved anyway. No regrets. Nicole asked, curled against his side. Adrian looked around their modest apartment, at the second-hand furniture they'd chosen together, the books they both read and discussed, the photographs of their new life covering the walls where portraits of dead Corleones had once hung. None, he said, and meant it absolutely. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. Outside, the city hummed with the quiet energy of ordinary people living ordinary lives. Inside, two extraordinary people who'd survived the unthinkable settled into the beautiful routine of love based on truth. The past was finally, truly behind them. The future stretched ahead, bright with possibility. And in this moment, this perfect, honest, real moment, Adrian Matthews and Nicole Wick were exactly who they'd always been meant to be, themselves together free.